Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Bednarik, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this online service of the Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, a loving, spirited, and inclusive community. While our physical sanctuary is located in Port Townsend, Washington, the online community now extends far beyond the coordinates of the local map. Wherever it is that you are, or you happen to be this morning, we are delighted that you're here with us. In a moment, we'll be lighting our chalice here in the sanctuary, and you are most welcome to light a candle wherever you may be. We begin our service today by taking a moment to acknowledge that the waters, the mountains, the valleys, and the shorelines here in Port Townsend and the environs are the traditional territory of the Sklallam and Chemakum peoples. We honor and acknowledge our indigenous neighbors, and we vow to help restore and sustain their homelands, the flora, and the fauna. And if you're living in or near Port Townsend, we encourage you to travel the Cheechchaman Trail, which will provide you some deeper understanding of the indigenous history of this remarkable place. Our call to community this morning is number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are, words adapted from the Persian poet Rumi, music by Lynn Adair, and sung by Linda Bach.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Thank you, Linda. I now invite you to join our service assistant Joyce Francis and me in the lighting of our chalice with these chalice lighting words, a very short and a very sweet Finnish proverb, Finland, a country that knows how to work its way around darkness. Even a small star shines in the darkness. Our opening words this morning are tucked within a single sentence written by Douglas Adams, the author of the brilliant, profound, and hilarious novel Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I seldom end up where I wanted to go, but I almost always end up where I need to be. And now I'd like to welcome Bo Olgren, our Director of Family Ministry, who will share the time for all ages. Bo?
Good morning, everyone. As we may be fretting about the state of the world, we wanted to have a little reminder about our world. Here We Are by Oliver Jeffers. Here we are. Well, hello. Welcome to this planet. We call it Earth. It is the big globe floating in space on which we live. We're glad you found us, as space is very big, and there is much to see and do here on Earth. So let's get started with a quick tour. The planet is basically made up of two parts. And firstly, let's talk about the land. It is what we are on right now, and we know lots about the land. And then there's the sea, which is full of wonderful things. We know a bit about the sea, but we'll talk some more about that once you've learned to swim. There's also the sky, though that can get pretty complicated. On our planet, there are people. One people is a person. You are a person, and you have a body. Look after it, as most bits don't grow back. The most important things for people to remember are to eat, drink, and stay warm. And people come in many shapes, sizes, and colors. We may all look different, act different, and sound different, but don't be fooled. We are all people. There are animals too. They come in even more shapes, sizes, and colors. They can't speak your language, though that's no reason not to be nice to them. Your head is probably filled with many questions. Be patient. You'll learn how to communicate your ideas soon enough. Generally, how it works is that when the sun is out, it is daytime and we do stuff. And the rest of the time is night, when it is dark, save for the moon, and we sleep. Please. Things can sometimes move slowly here on Earth. More often, though, they move pretty quickly, so use your time well. Though we have come a long way, we haven't quite worked everything out, so there's plenty left for you to do. You will find all sorts of things out for yourself. Just remember to leave notes for everyone else. It looks big, Earth, and there are a lot of us on here, so be kind. There is enough for everyone. Well, that is planet Earth. Make sure you look after it, as it's all we've got. Now, if you need to know anything else, you can always ask someone else. You are never alone here on Earth.
Thank you, Bo. I'm at the upper end of your all ages, and I always enjoy your stories. Now I'd like to acknowledge and welcome those of you who are visiting us today. If you're a newcomer or are returning from being away for a while, please say hello in the comment section on the right side of your screen. We'd love to know your name and where you're from so we can get to know you better. There's always a lot happening here at QUUF. If you haven't yet done so, please check out our website at QUUF.org for a whole host of free online classes, events, and groups. We also hope you'll consider joining us for some coffee hour conversation after the service. Just look for that link that'll be posted in the comments section at the end of the service. And lastly, if you find this service useful or inspirational, hopefully both, we hope you'll share this link with your friends and family. So welcome all. We're glad you're with us today. And it's now time for our offering. Today, we're taking up a collection for the online programming, staff, and building costs here at QUF. If you've been enjoying these services but do not pledge, this is your opportunity to help us and express your gratitude. If you'd like to make a donation to this worthy cause, you have 3 options. Text the amount you'd like to give to the number now showing at the bottom of your screen. Go to QUF.org and click on the word giving, or simply mail a check here to QUF. We now gratefully receive your offering as we listen to the offertory No Cien number 1 by Eric Satie, played by Sheila Harwood. Thank you, Sheila. It's now time for us to share with you our joys and sorrows. As always, we begin this ritual with the recognition that our personal joys and sorrows are only a fragment of the joys and sorrows of the larger community. And thus, we place this first stone in honor of all the people in our community who are respecting the dark reality of the virus and being diligent with mask wearing and social distancing, all in the name of personal and community health. And now, within our congregation, we light a candle today for Carrie Andrews' mother, Kate Schumann. Diagnosed with Alzheimer's 2 years ago, Kate decided to voluntarily stop eating and drinking rather than succumb to the disease and lose all sense of herself and those she loved. She began the process after a lovely memorial gathering in her garden with immediate family and 3 close friends. She was supported by Carrie, Kate's husband Ned, and her granddaughter Perry Milner throughout the 10-day process. She died quietly at home on September 30th with all 3 of them beside her. We now place a stone for Alta and Dennis Crawford, who lost their brother Roger Stanford on the 8th of October to brain cancer after a prolonged battle with 3 different cancers. He lived in Riddle, Oregon. We light a candle for Rick Dennison, brother of member Larry Dennison and a friend of many. Rick had an emergency that led him to ICU in Swedish, but we're happy to report that he is recovering well. Larry and Rick send much appreciation for the loving thoughts and blessings they have received. And we light a candle for Nancheska Schaaf's brother, Richard, who was diagnosed with a terminal illness. He has been the family member caring for their 95-year-old mother. We light this candle for Nancheska and her family as they adjust and grieve to these hard times. And now we place a final stone, holding in our hearts the joys and sorrows I've just shared, while also thinking of the joys and sorrows amongst us that are unexpressed but of no less importance. I invite you now into a moment of silence, which will be followed by a musical response.
The reading this morning is a beautiful little poem by the American poet Jim Harrison entitled Warbler. This year we have 2 gorgeous yellow warblers nesting in the honeysuckle bush. The other day I stuck my head in the bush. The nestlings weighed 1/20th of an ounce, about the size of a honeybee. We stared at each other, startled by our existence. In a month or so, when they reach the size of bumblebees, they'll fly to Costa Rica without a map. The special music this morning is one of the most beloved songs in the Unitarian Universalist hymnal, Blue Boat Home, by Peter Mayer.
Standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
My guess is that we have all been there, en route somewhere between Alpha and Omega, and looking at a large two-dimensional map protected behind plexiglass. The plexiglass has been scratched and pocked and smudged from people pointing at the map with their fingers and keys, a pencil or a penknife, maybe a rest stop along the highway or a subway station in a large city. We're trying to figure out where exactly we are, and we're staring at the map, aided by a bright, bold arrow pointing to a very specific spot, and the arrow and the spot accompanied by 3 profound and comforting words. You are here. You are here. You look around and you think, here. Now, if you had a smartphone and a proper connection to satellites, you could pin your location and determine the exact coordinates, longitude and latitude of where your current here is. And if you texted those coordinates to your friends in Madagascar or Mumbai, they would know precisely where you were located on our simultaneously vast and microscopic planet. Vast because our planet is vast, filled with nooks and crannies, buttes and fissures, rivers and thickets, bustling cities, sleepy outposts, frog ponds, and massive oceans. It can be very easy to get lost on a vast planet. So maps and coordinates and smartphones with satellite connections come in very handy to help us figure out where here is. Now, our planet is microscopic, of course, relative to the vastness of the universe. Our tiny planet with its hospitable atmosphere tucked into that narrow astronomical Goldilocks zone, that sweet spot that is just close enough and just far enough away from the sun to make our planet not too hot, not too cold, rotating and revolving in our solar system that is tucked in the Milky Way galaxy itself, tucked in a universe made up of 100 capital B billion galaxies. Now, I know that was a lot. Here's a little bit more. Think of the enormity of that number for a moment. 100 billion galaxies. There's so many galaxies that if you tried to count them all and you invested 1 second in counting each galaxy, it would take you roughly 3,100 years to count every galaxy. Now, I will double-check the math on that. You are welcome to calculate the number for yourself, which of course makes the sight gag even funnier. That picture of our beloved Milky Way, that flossy sweep of stars, and the big, bold arrow pointing to some spot in the star fog, and the arrow in the spot accompanied by 3 profound and comforting words. You are here. You are here. You are here in both places at once, here at that byway between Alpha and Omega on our vast planet, at the precise crossing of a longitude and a latitude, and you are also here, floating on this gorgeous fleck of space dust, tucked within a galaxy itself, tucked somewhere within a universe of 100 billion galaxies. This head-spinning contrast is precisely why all the French existentialists smoked and enjoyed their time discussing philosophy and soccer in cafes throughout Paris, which leads us, of course, to the classic teaching of the Buddha, slightly edited, on how difficult it is to realize human form, to become an actual living, breathing human being, to achieve those first 2 critically existential words, you are, so you could enjoy the 3rd word, here. And in this reading, the word bhikkhu roughly translates as monk. And while not appearing in this particular reading, there's also a feminine form, bhikkhuni, meaning nun. And it's interesting to note that the term bhikkhu comes from the verbal root meaning to beg. Because monks and nuns had few worldly possessions, they had to rely upon gifts from the community to keep enough in their bellies to maintain their Buddhist practice. Now, the Buddha speaks first in this story, and then a monk. Suppose a person threw into the sea a yoke with 1 hole in it, and the east wind carried it to the west, and the west wind carried it to the east, and the north wind carried it to the south, and the south wind carried it to the north. Suppose it were a blind turtle that came up once at the end of each century, what do you think, bhikkhus? Would that blind turtle put his neck into that yoke with one hole in it? Well, he might, venerable sir, sometime or other at the end of a long period. Bhikkhus, the blind turtle would sooner put his neck into that yoke with a single hole in it than a fool, once gone to perdition, would take to regain the human form. In other words, this human existence, your human existence, is less likely than a blind turtle surfacing from the bottom of the sea once a century, putting their neck through a hole in a floating yoke. Now that fool who was human, who squandered their consciousness and cycled back to a lower form, has a very long time to wait before realizing a human form once again, meaning, of course, gaze lovingly at your hands. Look deep into your heart. Realize the precious existential reality of you are here. It's an absolute miracle. So let's create and cultivate a worldview and a daily practice that treats your existence as such, as miraculous. Which means, of course, the person next to you at the map, squinting and trying to figure out where they are, is also a certifiable miracle. Your existence and their existence are all but impossible. And yet, you are here. Here you are. Now I think that we can easily lose the thread of the miraculous nature of our human existence. Put another way, your life began when a single sperm won a race against 100 million other sperm, give or take. It won the race to touch and ignite a single egg which presented itself from tight clusters containing anywhere between 1 and 2 million eggs. These are impossible odds. One single sperm out of 100 million sperm. One single egg from 1 or 2 million eggs. The timing, just right. And what happens? Well, in that vast sea, a blind turtle puts their head through the hole in the floating yoke, and here you are. It turns out that the Buddha's story aligns pretty well with biology. And when I think about the miracle of your very existence, of my very existence, I think about the first principle of Unitarian Universalism, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And I'd like to make a point again that I've made in previous homilies, that the first principle is very careful to say specifically every person, and not the more general all people. Every person, helping make up the vastness of the word humanity, is seen and cherished. And as impossible as it is, every star in the galaxy is named and seen and cherished. And when I consider that principle, I actually sometimes translate the words inherent worth and dignity as miraculous existence. So listen to our first principle, the miraculous existence of every person. And I know that I shouldn't fiddle with the wordings of our principles, but imagine the powerful transformation of perception when centering your existence in the actual miraculous, and then seeing and experiencing every person, every worthy and dignified person, as the actual miracle that they are. And let us also include the hummingbird and the marlin, the warblers and the fruit bat, the sunflower, mushrooms, oyster, octopus, miracles, all. And yet, if we are not careful, our miracle becomes mundane. Like the fool who squandered their human consciousness, we drift off toward becoming unconscious or non-conscious. And can you imagine a more woeful state of affairs when the miracle becomes mundane. Worse yet, our miraculous existence becomes routine unless we are conscious and cultivate attention. Certainly, one of the reasons many people attend services on the Sunday morning, if we are not careful, we can coarsen and dull our perceptions. We can wither our wonderment. We can squander our blessed existence, and we become dead before we die. Now, in 8th grade, my English teacher proclaimed to a classroom of 13-year-olds that she was never bored. The world was much too interesting, and if we ever complained about being bored, that was a call to fire up our imagination, sharpen our powers of observation, deepen our ability to wonder, and improve our planning by carrying a good book with us at all times. And that was some tough love from Miss Dorman, but a life lesson that stuck to me like a burr, and happily so. Whenever I feel boredom creeping into my miraculous existence, Miss Dorman appears on my shoulder and reminds me in no uncertain terms, Joseph, find your book and open it. And so I bow to the fundamental and inspirational lessons of all great English teachers, all fearless prophets, all X-ray vision poets, all Buddhas under Bodhi trees, every nun sitting in meditation, every Jesus washing every foot of every disciple, each whirling dervish, billions of nursing mothers, and grieving spouses with lips pressed to the forehead of a loved one dying. Pay attention to the miracle. Pay attention within the miracle. So let's take as a miraculous fact the reality of 3 simple words. You are here. Okay, now what? When confronted with this question, the final 2 lines of a Mary Oliver poem come to mind. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? The poem's entitled The Summer Day, and here, with summer seemingly still with us on these brilliant autumn days, here, slogging our way deeper into a global pandemic that is teaching us in no uncertain terms the unignorable truth of the 7th Unitarian Universalist principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Let us bring voice to this poem that has so much to teach us about our miracle. The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? How beautiful it would be to tack this poem at every publicly posted map to accompany that arrow in the phrase, you are here. You are here now. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And if your life provides you with the privilege of choices, consider your miraculous self profoundly blessed. Many billions of your fellow miracles have limited, if any, choices. And they call us to fulfill our 2nd Unitarian Universalist principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And for those of us who have been privileged with choices, We have the sacred responsibility of choosing well. Our UU principles are explicit and clear in helping guide us, especially our fourth principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And to again call on the French existentialists, I think this is exactly what they were doing in those Parisian cafes. They were searching for truth and meaning. They didn't know that they were Unitarians. They were smoking, they were drinking, they were discussing, they were arguing, they were riffing on ideas to be supported or supplanted, and then contemplating the mysteries of the universe, what they called the absurd universe. Now, I'd like to think that Albert Camus came up with this idea in a smoky Parisian cafe, quote, "Against eternal injustice, people must assert justice. And to protest the universe of grief, they must create happiness." So I am with Camus 100 billion%. Assert justice and create happiness. And if I were sitting with him in that cafe, I probably wouldn't be smoking, but I would add 2 words, for all, as in justice and happiness for all. And all extends beyond the bounds of human-centered existence to the flora and fauna of the world, and I'm confident that Camus would agree. And this is also what the poet is teaching us. When the miracle lands in the palm of your hand, see it for what it is. Study the intricate design of this particular insect, a design that took millions of years of evolution to create. Watch how the grasshopper moves her jaw. See how the grasshopper gazes with complicated eyes. You are both using your complicated eyes. Watch how she washes. See how she snaps her wings and floats away. You have just held millions of years and perfect design in your hands. In your hand. It reminds me of number 398 in our hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition, William Blake's short poem that's put to music. To see the world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. I don't know exactly what a prayer is, the poet says. I do know how to pay attention. You are here. The blind turtle found the hole in the floating yolk and put their head through. The greatest gift within your miracle is time. Consider that time, your time, sacred. Sanctify your time. Someday soon, you won't have any more time. So right now, on this Sunday morning, tucked somewhere deep within 100 billion galaxies, savor your miracle by paying attention. Paying attention is a profound spiritual practice, perhaps the deepest spiritual practice. You were here. Now what? That grasshopper in the palm of your hand is telling you everything that you need to know. Amen. And in a beautiful stroke of miraculous luck, our closing hymn this morning is number 398, To See the World in a Grain of Sand, words by the brilliant William Blake, music arranged by Edvard Grieg, and sung by Linda Bach.
To see the world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity
I now invite you to join in our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we're together again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I hope that you'll join us for our virtual coffee hour, a link which you will find in the comments section. But to close, let us turn our attention to Sheila Harwood as she plays our postlude, an amazing version, by the way, of When Our Heart is in a Holy Place by Joyce Poley.